writer David Brooks argues that the dysfunctional system of meritocracy is largely responsible and needs to be redefined. He joins Hari Srinivasan to discuss further.
Brianna, thanks. David Brooks, thanks so much for joining us. Your recent cover story in The Atlantic dives into how essentially we have created a system of meritocracy that isn't working. It's created a diploma divide in America. You write, the meritocracy has provoked a populist backlash that is tearing society apart. Today, the most significant political divide is along educational lines. Less educated people vote Republican, and more educated people vote Democratic. So how did one lead to the other?
Well, the diploma divide, the political divide, grows out of a deep cultural divide. And so increasingly people with college degrees and people with high school degrees are living in different worlds. People with high school degrees die 8 years younger. They're 10 times more likely to die of opioid addiction. They're much more likely to be obese. They're much less likely to marry. They're much more likely to have kids out of wedlock. They even have fewer friends. 24% of high school grads say they have no close friends. And so they're living, we have created two different Americas. And we created that unintentionally, but on purpose. Over the last 70 years, we created a world in which people who do really well in school get to go to fancy colleges, marry each other, invest heavily in their kids. They get to go to fancy colleges. They move to the same 10 or 12 cities, Austin, San Francisco, Washington, and they've created an inherited caste structure. And 50% of America takes a look at this and says, you educated elites, you have too much power. And by the way, you're not all that competent, so we're going to revolt, and that's what Donald Trump is all about.
You know, you kind of go back into the history of the interest of the Harvard president almost 100 years ago. How does that translate into this situation that you're describing?
Yeah, the guy's name was James Conant, and he inherited a situation, which was getting into Harvard was super easy if your dad went to Harvard. Harvard and Princeton and Yale and schools like that were for the Protestant establishment. And so the ideal in those days was to be a well-bred man. And you didn't want to study hard. Academics were not important, but you had to be socially polished. And he decided that's ridiculous. We can't enter the 20th century governed by the dim-witted children of Mayflower families. We need a new kind of elite. And he had great faith in the power of IQ tests and in the power of GPA, getting really good grades. So he said, we're going to pluck all the smart kids from all across America. We'll bring them to places like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and they'll run the society really well. So inherently, he was creating a new elite. The problem with his vision was that, A, rich families learned to game the system. And the second problem with his system is he didn't have the right definition of human ability. For him, it was all IQ. And IQ is important. It really is. If you want to be an astrophysicist, probably important to have a high IQ. But those of us who, live life know there are other things that are more important. Being curious, having a passionate drive, being a good teammate, agility, knowing how to move in life so you're graceful toward other people and decisive toward yourself. And so all these traits, which were hard to measure, got locked off. And so we not only created this elites, this inherited caste system, but it's not that competent because it doesn't select on the basis of what are the real skills in society.
Hey, is it okay to ascribe this current situation to the meritocracy in the amount that you do? Meaning, are you, David Brooks, giving enough credit to the social policies that multiple administrations have come up with that might have exacerbated the very, dichotomy in America that we're describing? Is it all the meritocracy? Aren't other things responsible for this as well?
I'm monomaniacal about this, so maybe I oversee it. But I would put it this way. A lot of the social policies grow out of the assumption of the educated class. And I'm a member of this educated class. I went to an elite school. I teach elite schools. I'm deep in the system. But we decided that in moving to a post-industrial society, we need to create all Americans to look like us. And so you had a whole succession of presidents with education policies, where the policy was designed, we're going to funnel all kids into college, four-year colleges, because you need a college to get the, quote, jobs of the future. And then look at our immigration policy. Our immigration policy, we're going to relatively open borders. That creates cheap labor force for those of us in the educated class, but a lot of competition for those more working class folks. Look at our trade policy. We're very tolerant of free trade, which is what the market wants. It's very efficient. But it meant a lot of jobs got shipped overseas, and not my job as a journalist. That didn't get shipped overseas, but a lot of other people's jobs.
when I was growing up, shop class was an option. Now, when I talk to younger people, they're just like completely flummoxed by the idea of going to something that would teach you carpentry and welding at high school, right? I mean, but we as a culture decided that, well, those were not really even tracks that we wanted to invest in for secondary or primary education.
Yeah, we used to train on lots of things in schools. Shop class is one thing. We used to have more arts education. There used to be things called the Courtesy Club where people were taught social skills. Now we do a little of that through social and emotional learning, but not as much as we should. And basically, we just took one form of intelligence, the ability to do well in school, and we said that's the thing that matters. If you can get straight A's, you're the kind of person we want to promote. And by 9 or 10 years old, kids know. They know either the school thinks I'm a smart kid, in which case I get put into the pressure cooker, or the school thinks I'm a dumb kid, in which case I'm probably mentally checking out. And it's just wrong to be sorting kids at that early age, especially by a very narrow and bogus criteria. One of the problems with the meritocracy is it's based on a non sequitur, that doing really good at school is the same thing as doing really good at life. And that's not true. The relationship between your high school and college grades and your life outcomes, that correlation is essentially trivial. There was a study done, somebody looked at thousands of cases where people were fired from their job. Why were they fired? In only 11% of the cases, they were fired because they lacked intelligence or technical skills. In 89% of cases, it's because they were bad teammates, they were hard to coach, they didn't try hard, they weren't calm under pressure. And so these are things which the scientists call non-cognitive skills because they're hard to count. But to me, they're the most important thing in life, and our schools have sort of shunted them off to the side. Highly intelligent people are really good at persuading themselves their own false ideas are true. And so we need a lot of other things aside from that. And so to me, so you look at a study of, somebody did a study of students and they gave them a bunch of consulting problems, like as if they were in a consulting firm. And the Ivy League kids did only a tiny amount better than the other kids. And so, for example, Adam Grant took the results of that study and calculated that a Yale grad in these consulting problems did about 1.9% better than a grad from Cleveland State. And that's not a big difference. And so the parents of high school juniors think that there's an awesome difference between Princeton and Penn, or between Penn State and Penn, or between. This is a status system that really has no correlation in reality.
Look, I haven't met any college administrators in my time reporting on higher education who are happy with the U.S. News and World Report rankings and how disproportionate that number factors into how prospective parents think, right? But there is definitely, an idea that has crept in and been established in the minds of those parents is that, look, this is the system that has created this American society for good as well as the